So if there are no questions, let me move on to the third topic that I wanted to discuss. And again, this is something I speak with my students quite a lot. So the third topic is motivic development. And I think motivic development is very important both in improvisation and in composition. The reason why we talk about motivic development is that when we improvise or when we write music, it's pretty obvious that we cannot just play the same thing over and over, right? Because if we just take a motif and just repeat it a million times, it will be boring for the listener. It will be monotonous if we don't change it in a way. But at the same time, if we constantly play something different, like play a different motif every 5 seconds, it's also going to be boring. And that's a little less obvious to people. People know that if you play the same thing over and over, it will be boring, but people are not as aware that if you constantly change the idea, it will also be boring. So the idea of motivic development is to take some motif and repeat it in some form, but also add some variation to it. So the listener can follow the way you're developing it. The listener can hear some story behind it. The listener can find some logic behind it. That's why we talk about motivic development both in improvisation and composition. So I'm sure you must have heard about motivic development before, and so what I would like to talk about it from my perspective as an educator, because it's a very common statement that you hear in schools and that you hear in like YouTube master classes that so the teacher would tell a student, just take an idea and play a whole chorus using that idea, or take an idea and build a whole solo using that one idea. And that's a very great concept, but from my experience, for some of my students, it's not specific enough. So what I mean is, the problem is that my students tend to put so much variation to the motif that the listener cannot really tell that it was derived from the original motif. So basically, there is so much variation that the solos lack logic. So let's say if you, let me play something. If I play again, There Will Never Be Another You. Let me pick a motif like, that will be my motif. So if I ask my student to build a solo based on this motif, I'll hear oftentimes something like, basically, there was some repetition in the first two measures, and then it was just like a solo, like that has almost nothing to do with the original motif. Maybe my student could follow some kind of relation to the original motif, but I couldn't follow at all. So the way I started working on motivic development with my students is to consider one specific type of variation of a motif, or sometimes a combination of two, and just work on this one type of variation. So if I have a motif if I do, So based on the notes of the E flat major scale, I just transpose it. The transposition can be diatonic or chromatic. So if I do, let's say, that's original motif. If I start on the E flat, then I can do diatonic, or I can do chromatic. So chromatic goes outside of the notes, outside of the key center. It uses notes outside of this E flat major scale, but keeps exactly the interval. So there's like a perfect fourth going up, then descending major second, then descending perfect fourth. So yeah, so we have diatonic transposition, chromatic transposition. Then what else do we have? Someone said some rhythmic variations. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Some like this. Okay, what other types of rhythmic?
Changing direction of each note.
I'm sorry, changing?
Duration of each note.
Oh, changing duration, yes, exactly. And we can do it in a proportional way, so very common tools are diminution and augmentation. So if I do like 1, 2, 3, 4, so I switched from eighth notes to quarter note triplets, so that's augmentation because every note is longer. Or I can do 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's diminution. Great, so these are rhythmic tools. Then we have some other tools, such as you probably heard from studying the music of Bach, such as inversion or retrograde. So you could do so then the inversion would be retrograde would be retrograde inversion would be so you have all of these, but there's also another type of variation that is very important to me is when you it's called basically intervallic alteration, but keeping the same shape of the melodic idea. And this is something that's very useful in my opinion, because let me start with just transposition first, and then I'll go to that. So let me try to use only transposition. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was using basically exactly the same rhythm and exactly the same place in the measure, only transposing that motif, and that's a great tool if you, let's say, you start a solo, you want to find a nice connection with the rhythm section. Having a repetitive rhythm and repetitive melodic shape really helps to lock in with the rhythm section. This is not an exercise for beginners or something like this. This is something that professional musicians do. If you're playing with someone you've never played before, or if you're just starting a concert, you're not warmed up, you really want to lock in with the rhythm section, having a repetitive rhythm and a repetitive shape is really a very useful tool. However, using only transposition is very limiting, especially if you have complicated chord changes, because sometimes it's easier to match a chord change if you can tweak the intervals a little bit. So let's say, that's why I'm saying a very useful type of variation is basically a situation when you keep the rhythm and you keep the shape of the motif. However, you can change the intervals a little bit. So let's say and so the question is like, what does it mean to keep the shape? For me, the shape of a melodic motif is basically the direction of the intervals. So if you change the intervals, but you change them in such way that the ascending intervals stay ascending, and the descending intervals stay descending, and the unisons stay unisons, it will give the listener a very strong feeling that it's the same idea, it's the same motif. So let's say if I have, and then, so I changed perfect fourth to major sixth, but it's pretty obvious it's the same idea because the shape is the same. I still have an ascending interval, descending interval, and a descending interval. Something like this. What I like to add to the concept of keeping the shape of the interval is that I like to keep the seconds as seconds. So in this interval, I have a fourth going up, then a second going down, then a fourth going down. So I like to keep that second as a second. So I can change the fourth into like sixth or fifth or seventh, but I keep the second as a second. Might be a minor second or major second, but so let me play 1, 3, 4. So this way I have a little bit more freedom with emphasizing some notes in the harmony that need to be emphasized because of the changing harmony. But at the same time, the listener can still follow me, can still hear that it's the same idea because the shape is the same. can also add to it is another type of variation is, it's called in English, I guess, extension. So adding some notes in the beginning or in the end of the motif. So let me try that. So just adding some notes in the beginning or in the end. So instead of, so my idea is to limit yourself to only very specific types of motivic variation instead of practicing all of them at the same time. Because this way, if you practice all of them at the same time, you might end up in a situation when you understand your solo, but no one else does. And that's not a good thing, obviously. And that's an important concept in general. Whenever you improvise, you understand your solo better than anyone else. So to keep this in mind. So the concept of clarity in improvisation is very important. Play in a way that other people have a chance to understand you. And this is something I've heard quite a lot in the United States. That, for example, I didn't hear teachers talk about this in my country, in Poland. So the concept of clarity, the concept that you should play in a way that is understandable to people. You should, if you develop an idea, develop the idea in a way that is comprehensible. Okay, so let's move on to other types of variation. Let's try only rhythmic displacement. And let's change the motif to something a little easier, like something like this. So I'm gonna try to improvise using only rhythmic displacement. Only the same notes, just displaced. 1, 2, 3, 4. When we're talking about rhythmic displacement, it's interesting for me teaching master classes and like that displacing by an even amount of eighth notes is much easier for my students than displacing by an odd number of eighth notes. So, and because the motifs sound really much different if you place them when you twist them by an odd number of eighth notes, because suddenly the downbeats become upbeats, upbeats become downbeats, so it really sounds much different. I had an interesting situation when one time I arranged, I made an arrangement for my friend who is a singer, and as a joke I put a melody of the saxophone's composition in his saxophone part. But I transposed it and I displaced it rhythmically. And the funny thing is he didn't recognize that his own melody. So he was playing his own melody on the gig. He didn't like ask him like, oh, how was the gig? Like, oh, it was good, it was good. And did you notice something? Like what? And so, so it's really interesting how displacing a melody by an eighth note or 3 eighth notes or 5 eighth notes gives a much different feeling to the melody, to the point that someone might not be able to recognize it. So, so it's good to practice these things. There are some musicians who use that kind of displacement quite a lot. I remember I used to study with a great guitar player, Gilad Hexelman, so I remember he used that device so much. and it was very interesting. So anyway, so that was only rhythmic displacement. So let's add some diminution and augmentation to it. Right now, I'm showing this to you as an exercise. I admit that I like to play like this in my solo. I like to play around with rhythmic displacement, but it doesn't have to be your favorite style. Some people like to play just longer lines, longer eighth note lines rather than short motifs. I like to play short melodic motifs. But regardless of your musical taste and what your preferences are in terms of phrasing, I think it's good to work on these things even just as an exercise, just to be able to do something like this if there is a specific situation when it's necessary. Now, let's add transposition to it. Or maybe, yeah, let's add transposition to it. 3, 4, 1, 3. Let's do something different. I'm not gonna do diminution, augmentation, but I will try, let's try inversion or retrograde. So retrograde would be, sorry. So this is the motif. So retrograde would be, yeah, so I'm gonna combine the original with the retrograde. And using transposition, yeah, and rhythmic displacement. I know that this might sound like a weird exercise to some of you, but still I believe that it's good to limit yourself so that I just think that exercises are more useful if you have very specific parameters rather than just having too much freedom in your exercises. So basically, you limit yourself in the exercises so that you have more freedom while you actually improvise. Let's try with inversion. So inversion will be. So that's inversion. So I can try, let's say, inversion, and let's do augmentation diminution. So that was another one. I mean, there are some other types of variation also, such as there is simplification. So let's say if I have a there's another one that's interesting. This one I can actually show you because it's also an interesting exercise. It's called truncation. So cutting a note from the ending or the beginning. So when I have like, so I can cut a note in the beginning so it becomes, or like just, or like, so let me play around with only truncation and rhythmic displacement. Transposition to this. 2, 3, for some reason harder. Then you can also have simplification when you remove a note from the middle of the motif. So like, or like, so that's without the second note, or like, that's without the third note. And also, you can do more general types of variations that, let's say, you keep the intervallic structure but play just totally different rhythm. So that's another option. Or you keep the rhythm but have totally different intervallic structure, just not even the shape the same. But if you change the shape, I feel like it's easier for the listener to not to follow the logic. have one more topic to discuss about the freedom of improvisation. It relates more to the melodic shapes and so I will show it on the example of more like modal type of playing. So let's say if we have a like improvising on just one chord, let's say one scale. So many of my students play something like this. So I used a bunch of different rhythms. I was trying to play in a way a little bit above the bar line, but I used only one interval, maybe except for some exceptions. I used only seconds. So all I did is just going up and down the scale. And that's very common for my students because on many instruments, guitar is definitely one of those instruments, the smaller interval, the easier it is to play. So for example, on guitar, if you want to play a seventh, you have to like jump from like A string to G string or from G string to E string. And it relates to some issues, like the right hand has to go from one string to another. There is a potential for some noise or something. So our fingers kind of try to force us to play small intervals. And that's very limiting in terms of phrasing. And also has pretty serious rhythmic consequences. So one of the very common comments that I have to my students is, don't just play up and down the scale. Don't just use the interval of a second. Experiment with larger intervals. And it's not an easy thing to do spontaneously. So one thing, a very simple exercise that I recommend to my student is basically if you want to introduce a new device, it's hard to introduce it in the middle of a phrase. It's much easier to introduce it in the beginning of the phrase. So let's say if you would like to use more large intervals, try to start every phrase with a larger interval. So let me, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say I'm gonna start every phrase with an interval of at least fifth, sixth, or seventh. Simple exercise, but it really changes a lot. As I mentioned before, larger intervals not only have strong melodic consequences, but they also have stronger rhythmic consequences. There is something, I feel like for drummers, it's more inspiring to hear notes that are farther away in pitch. It gives a stronger rhythmic feeling. Like even if you think about, a lot of music is based on like bass drum and snare. Obviously these are not specific pitches, but in terms of frequencies there is a very large gap, and which makes it very rhythmic when you have those low bass drum notes and the snare notes. So introducing larger intervallic leaps in your lines can be very beneficial. So another thing that you can try besides just playing a large interval in the beginning of your phrases is to start a phrase, for example, with a triad. There are many different ways to play triads because we have root position triads, we have first inversion triads, we have second inversion triads, we have open position triads. So let's say we can have, so these are root position triads. We can have second inversion triad. We have, these are first inversion triads. We have second inversion triads. Then we have open position triads. And so on. So again, and then we have permutations of these triads. So let's say if I take, let's say second inversion triad, like a G major triad. There are 6 permutations of these triads. So we have six permutations of even a single triad. And again, you can, an interesting way to force your fingers to not to only play the seconds, to play some large intervals, is to incorporate these triads in your lines. First, starting every phrase with a triad. So let me try that. Very simple examples on just D Dorian scale, but you can use this concept in the context of bebop language, starting bebop lines with triads, and yeah. But the most important thing is don't just play a scale up and down. Especially there's something. When you improvise and you go just like, there's something about going up and coming back using the same diatonic notes that sounds very kind of silly. I don't know how to say it, like so if you change the direction of the melody, I always tell my students, it's good to use a larger interval or some kind of chromaticism, because if you just it's better to or like so those moments when you change the direction of the melody are especially important, and just going diatonically up and coming back down using the same notes can sound a little silly. Yes, so basically these are the 4 topics that I wanted to discuss with you today. These are the things that regardless of where I go to, whether it's a college or a summer jazz camp, I feel like my students have issues with these things. So I just wanted to tell you how I deal, what kind of exercises I give my students to work on it. Okay, so I guess we can finish here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank